but as I, we got into my master's program, I really was like, I want to know, how did those Black women navigate that space? Because I'm still trying to figure it out. How did they do it? Because I would not have gone. I would not have went. I would have been like, y'all got it. How did those women, go and enjoy it? Because today, if you talk to anybody who went to Freaknik, and women, they be like, oh, Freaknik was dead. They're happy. And I'm just like, okay, but how did you navigate this space? And so that's pretty much what my project talks about. I interviewed 7 women and 5 men. Just due to the amount of time, I wasn't able to interview a lot of people, but the few that I did, out of all the women that I talked to, one of them was actually sexually assaulted, and the others were not, for other reasons, like they were in a group, or they were older, different things like that. So Freaknik actually started in 1983, on the
Wow, I didn't know it was that old.
hmm on the AUC campus. Pretty much, I don't want to say it began with the Greeks, but I'm pretty sure they were in a club called the DC Metro Club, and I'm sure there was some Greeks all part of that organization who, then
It sounds like a Greek event. Now that you say it, it sounds like a party that I've gone
Look
to.
now.
I'm just saying, like, let's just be real here. Greeks, they are a part of everything.
I'm about to say we are leaders.
They are a part of everything, and I so appreciate the Greeks for that.
Thank you.
Go
But
ahead, Ciera.
so it started in 1983 by the DC Metro Club. So these students were actually from the DC area. And, they did Freaknik because they wanted an event to happen for the spring. During spring break, not everybody was able to go back home to DC. So they was like, we're just going to have a picnic, and we're going to call it Freaknik to go along with their theme of Freak of the Week. Because for them, their big thing when they was in high school was go-go music, which originated in DC. So that's really where the ideas come from. Look, I see you, Ciera. You're like,
I'm just yeah.
so, look, it's a connection. It's a connection. But and so that's really where it started. It was just a small picnic on the AUC campus of about 50 people that came together, just listened to go-go music and had a good time. And over the years, it got bigger and bigger. And by 89, it kind of exploded because it was no longer just an AUC thing. Or when I say AUC, I mean Atlanta University Center. It became a Black college thing, like all Black colleges, because word of mouth. People are like, "Oh, this happened, and we had a good time here. You should come down." Da, da, da. That's pretty much what happened. And not only that, it also got mentioned on A Different World and Sister, and also in Spike Lee's School Days. And Spike Lee, he's a graduate of Morehouse, so he knew what Freaknik was. So just hearing Freaknik and other people hearing about that, like, oh, we're coming down. So again, it kind of exploded, and there was a lot of people that came that year, all in Washington Park, having a good old time. And as each year went by, it got bigger and bigger, and eventually it wasn't just a college thing, it was a Black thing. Black people, young Black people, just coming together and just having a good time. And one thing that I remember that I was actually surprised when hearing these women talk about Freaknik was, they was like, it was the first time that I saw so many Black people come together and there was no fighting.
And had a good
There
time.
was no, it was just, we're all together, dancing, eating, having a good time. And I'm like, the way that they were describing it, I was like, man, I want to go to that. That sounds awesome, because I can't think, at least in my generation, something similar to that, where it's just a mass of just Black people just coming, almost like a pilgrimage of Black people just coming together and just having a good old time. I experienced that on a small scale with my family reunion that happens every year. And I know how great that feels. But can you imagine, like, just young Black college students just coming together? Y'all are connecting. You're saying, oh, you're from Virginia State, or I'm from LA, or, and you're just meeting all different types of people and just having just a great time.
Now it sounds fun. until you start talking about numbers and out of control, and then it doesn't sound as fun anymore.
And that's exactly what I meant by, in some ways, Atlanta and its mayor at the time, Bill Campbell, they were right to feel that they were how they felt. It was complicated, but it, in some ways, like the amount of people that were coming, it was over 200,000 people coming to Atlanta. And Atlanta did not have the infrastructure at that time to support that many people. And so they pretty much was shutting down the city. It was just highway.
Traffic is already a mess. Listen, I can imagine.
It was gridlock. People weren't able to go anywhere. So they was just partying on the highways.
Gotta have fun.
And that's great and all, but the city is not able to function. Trucks are not able to get to their destinations, and you're really just halting the business of the city. Now, this isn't to say that Atlanta didn't make a amount of money. They made huge amount of money, but it's still like the city was not able to run. And so in 90, I want to say about 95, Bill Campbell was pretty much like, Freaknik is not welcome. Y'all don't come. And of course, Black college students are like, we gonna come. What you mean? So 95 was very, I say there was a lot of tension because students were there in a space that they felt unwelcome, but they're like, but we're going to be welcome here. This is our thing. It had been going on since 83. So they're like, you can't stop us, especially with the young mentality of college students. And then you have more of the older people coming, and it's just a mixture of different things happening at that time. So by like 97, Freaknik had pretty much, because the restrictions on by Atlanta had gotten more tougher. They were issuing like a lot of tickets, impounding cars, arresting people for simple stuff. And then on top of that, assault of women was happening. A lot of assault of women. Even before 95, assault on women were happening. It was happening. Just like it happens on college campuses, it was happening at Freaknik, So the problem and why we don't hear a lot about it is at that time, it's that respectability piece. If you're going to Freaknik, you know what's going to happen. You can't really complain. This is what they would say. You can't really complain. And when I say they, I mean the women who I spoke to. You can't complain that you got assaulted because you went to Freaknik. You knew the atmosphere.
And that's what they said, the ones who went.
That's crazy.
And that is terrible.
It was terrible. And I was listening to what they were saying. It was just like, it was kind of like it was the woman's responsibility to keep herself out of a situation where she didn't get assaulted. Right. And honestly, it stems a lot from the history of women being assaulted by white men. It stems from Black men being called rapists and being lynched for that. It's a whole connection in terms of them understanding sex, how to assert consent, what it means, what being a Black woman means. It's so connected. And it was like Freaknik was a space to like rip all that off and just be whatever. But it's like, you can't, because women were still being assaulted. So there was still that aspect there. And so it was like, once you came out of that Freaknik space, it was like, you can't really complain about what happened at Freaknik because you knew what was going to happen.
I think that's crazy.
That was something that was very hard for me to listen and hear, that older understanding of consent and what was okay for a woman to do and what not to do and stuff like that. And it was basically, if a woman went to Freaknik, she was risking that. Like, she couldn't really talk about what happened. And there were a few women who did, but I can only imagine that their stories didn't go any further from their friends or from their families. There was a few cases that were talked about in the news about women being assaulted and different things like that. I recall I think a 12 and a 13-year-old being raped during Freaknik. I can't exactly remember which year, but I'm sure it was in the late 90s. And the only reason why that story was known because they were a child of a city official. So, sometimes it was also about who you knew, who were you connected to, and whether that made your story relevant and whether people were willing to listen to what you had to say. So that's the unfortunate reality around Black women and sexual violence in this country is our story. It's not taken seriously, and that just comes from the history of how we're framed as Black women, as being promiscuous, as being sexually open, being just this sexual exotic goddess that we're always hungry to have sex. That's really where it comes from, and that image being the Jezebel being created during enslavement as a justification for the rape of Black women, and then once slavery was over, they continued that Jezebel thinking. And then to offset that, Black women, they were like, well, we're not Jezebels. We are asexual. Pretty much. We don't we wear long skirts. We're ladies. We don't act in this particular way. And I think that was really a survival mechanism, that two-facedness. I'm trying to think of that word, this culture of dissemblance, this idea that Black women had to be one face publicly and another face privately, and them expressing themselves sexually was not a thing. They didn't do that at all, because if they did, then they were seen as a Jezebel. Their word was not taken seriously. And then, and what I learned in my research with the women, and I asked them questions about, and even with the men, because I talked to the men too, because for me, I focus on women, but that doesn't mean that the male's voice is non-existent. Mm-hmm. They're a part. They understand or see things, and I think that their viewpoint is important. So when talking to the men, and I was asking them questions, how did you understand sex and consent and those first conversations? And pretty much women told me that they were told to be asexual. It was a focus on not getting pregnant. Don't get
pregnant. By who? Their parents?
Their parents.
Okay.
It was like,
that still happens in the Black community today. It's like,
it comes from, and for me, what I argue is that it comes from the idea of a woman or a Black woman not being seen as a Jezebel, because it was kind of common during enslavement to see young Black girls pregnant. Why? Because they were raped, So there was just this emphasis to protect Black girls to not be sexual at all, don't get pregnant. It was just that emphasis. But for Black boys, the emphasis was make sure you have consent. Make sure that you are, because the point was not about how to treat a woman, but it was about more so about keeping them out of jail. Because what was happening to Black boys? They were being accused of rape all the time. The fear of the Black male rapist is what honestly started a lot of these race riots that we talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. So I can imagine as a parent at that time being like, hey, don't touch on a woman. Don't, unless you have clear consent, because I don't want you to go to jail. Mm-hmm. And then the difference with their daughter, them being like, I don't want you to get pregnant. I don't want you in that lifestyle. I want you to get your education. I want you to don't get involved in any of that stuff, because I don't want you to be raped. I don't want you to get pregnant and then you be outcasted in the neighborhood. Mm. So all of that stuff, it is involved in the whole Freaknik deal, and how all of those ideas as to why the women didn't speak up, or how crazy it got and why it was so crazy, it really comes from the suppression of Black people not being able to express themselves sexually and not be scrutinized. And also at the same time, if something happens to them, if violence is put upon their bodies, that whole history of it being denied for Black women. and then it being forced upon Black men and then being prosecuted when there isn't even a trial. So it's a whole thing with Freaknik. It's a whole thing. And I was very grateful to the women and men who told me their stories. And that's why I think it's really important that more men and women talk about it. Talk about what happened to them at Freaknik, how great it was, how bad it was, why they went, why they didn't go. Like, it was really an important time and space for young Black people at that time. It's why Atlanta is what it is. Atlanta may not want to acknowledge it, but if it wasn't for Freaknik, people would not have known about Atlanta.
Right.
Yeah, I think that that's the space too. And I also, back to your point of, this is the time everybody could wild out, have fun. I'm stressed out. This is my weekend. I got somebody to watch the kids, or I get to go to another school and experience an HBCU. Maybe I go to a white institution and I want to go and have fun for that weekend or something like that. But I also think about spaces that we have today too that's similar. So after Freaknik, they started having like the Greek picnic. I only know about that. I mean, I'm not Greek, but I used to go down there with friends and they would go to this Greek picnic. And then I think about things today like the Polo Classic, or DC has like a similar event like the Polo Classic. So those events have tons of people. I don't know if it's just better organized or because it's a mixed race crowd coming in, or it's more of I'm going to use the word elite very loosely here. Elite people who are willing to go and spend that type of money to go. I wonder, similar that I was talking about to the Black Wall Street. I don't know if there will be another Freaknik ever, right? But
I don't know about that.
There can
I
be.
the way it was in the 90s.
No.
They actually are. There is a group called After Nine in Atlanta that they have been trying to revitalize Freaknik, and it's more of a family friendly sort of kind of.
How you gonna take Freaknik and make it family
That's not the
oriented?
same.
You can't even make that correlation.
That's what they tried to do in the late 90s when Freaknik was going down. That's what they tried to do, and they're basically just trying to do it again now. And and what the oldies say is, I mean, this is great, but this ain't Freaknik of what it was in the early 90s. And it's true.
I'm sitting here talking about, oh yeah, I love to go to Freaknik. Everybody know me, probably know that Ebony probably wasn't gonna be there, but I would like the idea of being in the space, or
Yeah, I don't know if I would like that idea, but I will say
not the sexual assault. I'm thinking of just
it's
Black
too wild.
young college students.
Yeah.
I need to bring it down a couple of notches for me, but
yeah. I will say I went to Caravana a couple years ago, 2019. And so that is a Caribbean fest that's in Toronto. And since I've never been to Freaknik, I can't say it's like similar, but the fact of thousands of people converging on Toronto, Caribbean music, Caribbean feel, all the different skin tones of, Black Caribbeans, it was amazing. I saw no fights. People were drinking, eating, having a good time. So I can imagine it's something a similar feel. And after that, I was like, look, I got to start coming back to these festivals. Like, I don't, unfortunately, know if I have much Caribbean in my family. We don't really know. My parents did kind of take their ancestry, one of the DNA tests. I don't know which one, but I found it didn't look like we had much. But when you're there, they welcome you. You feel like you're part of the family, and I love seeing thousands of people for one weekend and just having a good time. So I don't know about what kind of assaults happen, because when you're Caribbean, the outfits we had on was very limited, but it was all in fun and representing your country, right. Your people. But yeah, I would definitely do something like that again. And I'm sure there's other different types of events that are being held where you can still get that feeling. But one day, if we can get it where it's just we can do what we want to do. We can have a good time and we can
Safely.
act accordingly. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to get wild to have a good time. You have to respect each other, regardless of what you're wearing. Like you said, you had on jeans and he just grabbed two handfuls. Like, that's not okay. That's really not okay. You're completely covered up. So the woman should never, ever, ever feel as though you contributed to part of what happened to you. And I'm sorry that did happen to you. And it happens so much on campus, and off campus, but on campus, it's bad. And being on campus for no, it was only 2 years. But I've seen a lot. I've experienced a lot. So I can only, talk from what I've dealt with, but it does need to change. And I don't know where that starts and how to make sure that it carries all the way through to adulthood, but we do need to make some changes in that area for sure.
Some of it is based on who raised you, who you hang around, your principles, your beliefs. Because I mean, it's not all Black men. I mean, and
it's across all races.
And let's be clear too, women can assault men. So
some of the men told me that happened to them at Freaknik too.
So
I've grabbed a booty before. I mean, not grabbed. Look, this the real play. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I've been in the club before and I'd be like, you know what I'm saying? Back in the day, my wild days, back in the 2012, 2013.
2012, 2013.
That was my 2 wild years. That was it. That's all I did. Not all I did was grab booties. I'm saying that was my wild years. That's all I had. But yeah, and technically, that was sexual assault. Yeah. Did I think about it when it happened? No, because it was me doing it to a guy. He turned around. It was like, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't no like
it's that
cute
culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
party culture.
I ain't got
party culture. We are in the midst of the turn up culture. So I don't know if Freaknik can even come back, because if you ever been to Atlanta, you've been to a brunch, it's turned.
Absolutely.
So, and DC is a different vibe. You come to brunch here, you might get a little bit of turn up, but you're not gonna get turn.
Yeah, you're not gonna get twerk turn at the table.
Yeah,
you might get a little small twerk, a little 2-step,
but not a full all out. Yeah,
obviously just a legacy of Freaknik. When people come to Atlanta, they're expecting that kind of energy.
You are. I agree with that.
So
you will get it. You will get it.
You get what you expect.
Most definitely. Absolutely. I wanted to your question that you had asked earlier, about not if Freaknik could come back. I think I'm forgetting what it was. I'm so sorry.
That was a kind of a question that I posed. I also talked about other spaces that's kind of similar to more elevated spaces that's similar to
right.
Freaknik.
I think when it comes to I remember my point now. When it comes to like sexual assault and these type of events, they're at every single one of them. And I think the point of dealing with that at these events is acknowledging it, to prepare for it, to be what's the word I'm looking for?
Vigilant and
like, I can't think of the other words. Another word is on the tip of my tongue, but I can't say it. But just being prepared for it in the beginning, like not just waiting until it happens and then, I'm gonna deal with it. No, prepare for it. Take what women say seriously. And hopefully what the women are saying is truthful, and put it like that. And the only reason why I said that is because there is a history of women not being truthful. That's just true. I just think the issue of sexual assault needs to be taken more seriously on both sides. That is not something to play with. That it is, to be violated in that way, you really lose a part of yourself in a way. You feel like, wow, like anybody can come up and touch me. Anybody can do anything to me. And then if I say something, nothing will get done about it. And that happens a lot to Black women.
And it's deeper too, because Black women, we don't want to go and tell on a Black man, because then that puts them in jail, and there's this whole stigma against around that. And then we don't want to be looked at as
Black men.
so, you know, we've been taken advantage of, or that we are weak because we have to be strong. And, you know, it's just so much that goes on. If someone, I put it like this, if someone touches you and you've been sexually assaulted before, that touch can just magnify so much. And it's also all this trauma-based stuff going along with it. So I just feel like we have a long way to go. Just having this conversation, I'm just like, man, we came far, but just not far enough. Not far enough.
Not far enough. I saw this tweet the other day. It was like Rosa Parks died in 2005.
Wow.
And some other historical, I can't remember, but it was just basically saying that U.S. history is not that deep. And I'm like, it's not.
It's really
Civil
not.
rights, all that stuff. It was not that long ago.
Yeah.
You know that in history, that in our
did you know from the Reading Rainbow? Do you know about Reading Rainbow?
Our history books, the pictures of civil rights movements, they have them in black and white to make them seem like it happened further back.
I didn't know that was the reason, but that's because people talk about it, and I'm like, my parents were there. Like I'm not old.
My grandparents were there. That my grandma, I literally have a story of my grandma beating a white girl butt.
Okay, grandma.
Oh, my grandma was she was to play with.
Yeah, it's not that long. And even when you said, when you talk about Sweet Auburn, you were like 1956, I think you said 53, something like that. I'm thinking that's not that long ago. Like I always equate stuff like that to what year my parents were born. They were about to be born. Like that's not that long ago. So that's something to really consider. But the fact that the black and white, it does play with your mind. It makes it look like, oh, that had to be like in the 30s, the 40s, before they knew how to use color. Exactly. Color was out. You know what I'm saying? So yeah.
And the fact that you're learning it in school is almost a mind trick too, right? Because you're like, history, old, right? This is way back when.
Yes, I experience that a lot with my kids because I also work in the school system here.
I was about to say, wait a minute, kids. Girl, we was about to have a whole nother conversation. When did that happen? Okay, I got you.
No, my students. Okay. You know, I'm always willing to talk about history and tell them stuff. Now I was like, oh, that's so long ago. We already talked about that, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, but you haven't had me as a teacher. You're not gonna know what I'm going to teach you. So get out of that little, it's so long ago. No, we're gonna talk about this because it's important and you need to know it.
Yes. And it's closer to present day than not.
Right. That's what's important.
Absolutely. I can't even believe you guys like that it's even 2021. You know, I don't know if you're a little young, so you probably was like 4. But when 2000 hit, it was like this whole thing of like the computers are gonna shut down, stuff was gonna like the world was gonna end, and here we are.
We had a party that night. We had a party at my friend's house because it was like, oh, Y2K. Y2K. We was listening to what's his name? Will Smith. Yes, we was listening to that song. We had a slumber party. We're like, oh well, we'll just see what happens tomorrow.
I had a little shirt that had a little clock that counted down to. It was so bad.
And here we are. That's crazy.
Well, I want to say that happened. I remember experiencing that, but I don't remember what year it was. I don't remember. I don't know if it was 2010 or 2019.
It might have been 2012 because they were saying like the Mayans.
It was 2012. I remember that.
It's like these dates keep coming.
Pitch black, and I was like,
"What?"
Okay, like, so yeah, I have a similar experience. It's
you do.
A millennial.
Millennial. All right.
Even though I don't really identify with them, I identify with 90s babies. That's who I identify.
We're not even. I don't even know if we consider ourselves 90s. I don't consider myself 90s babies, quote unquote. I love the 90s, but I also was born in like 87, so I don't know if I can like. You know, technically I'm a 90s baby, but I'm not really born in the 90s.
I was born in 85, so
like I just remember what it was like before the internet, before all that. As long as
you remember before the internet?
Yes, I remember that.
Are you sure?
Well, we actually had internet back then when you were born.
Okay, well, wait. Not the.
You remember Mama telling you can't use the internet because you got to dial in. The
Right,
phone
we
won't
had
work.
the internet. Hold up, we ain't that old.
Is you couldn't. I remember not playing on the internet at all, but I remember like it not working if you was using the phone.
Right. You had that dial up.
And the little games on the computer.
You had a little CD that you had to.
Yes, I remember that. I remember the floppy disks. I remember all that stuff. Okay, my bad. I spoke wrong.
All right.
Yeah, life was different.
Yahoo used to look like, and I remember.
Okay, let me ask you another question. Pop quiz. Okay. What other browser did we have besides Yahoo? There was a very famous browser we used to have, and it's before Google. It will remind you of Google. You know what I'm talking about, Ciera?
I can think of one other browser, but I'm not sure if it reminds me of Google, so I want to know what the answer is.
So Google.
No, let her give her again.
You want me to give her another hint?
Give her, yeah.
Give her another hint.
Within Google, you can do what? Most people do what in Google when they search?
That's not a good hint.
They type a question, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So this particular search engine was reminiscent of someone asking questions.
Was it?
That's a great hint.
I said you give it too much.
Right, I know. I said that was a great hint.
X.com? Was it that?
No.
No. Okay, I'm sorry.
It was XGeeves.
XGeeves.
What?
Mm-hmm.
See, yeah, I don't know that one.
Google that. Do some research.
I remember Yahoo. That's what I remember.
All right.
Start. That's a good start.
I'm not that. You know, again, I was a little kid. All I did on the internet at that time was go to brats.com and play the Brats games. That's what I did. I wasn't
searching and asking questions.
I didn't have an email or nothing like that.
Well, I don't think we had email either, but yeah. All right.
Okay. I know a little bit. Just a little bit.
Okay. Well, man, this has really been a great episode. I'm going to have to mark this down as one of my favorites. And not because of, I got a little, love for you, Kimberly. But I really think that we really touched some topics that don't get touched a lot.
You did a great job, by the way.
Yes, you did. You really did.
I felt completely honored to have been asked to come on and speak. This is actually the first podcast I've ever been invited to.
Oh,
hope it gets you on more platforms, and you'll have to come back now. Don't get too big, friend. I'm just kidding. You have to come back.
No. I never forget my people. I never forget where I come from. I got the Texas Museum on my list. I got Clayton County on my list. I got, I just got places that I know have helped get me to where I am today that I'm never going to forget them. One thing that I will say about my discipline that they asked us, especially when I was in the master's program, was what kind of scholar are you going to be? What is important to you? Is it the higher ed and being in academia and all that stuff? Or is it being with the people? And for me, it's being with the people. I'm doing this work for my people, for us, not for white people to understand us, but for us to understand us. It ain't for them to understand. They can read it, sure, buy it, whatever, but it ain't for you. It's for my people. And that's why I found myself back at home, working in the community, because I'm like, I want to make it better. And I want us to learn. Like, I want my own community center. I want our businesses to be booming. I want our recycling center to be better. I want sidewalks everywhere. Like, I'm telling you, they don't know what's coming to them.
So,
they're not ready.
I love that. And we stand a smart Black woman around here. So I love that. That's awesome.
Yes.
So
I can just see you going big, doing things and making change.
Oh, I have no problem sending no email. Like right now, I have to send an email to the Georgia College Education Board, because they're talking about not teaching, or they passed this resolution of how critical race theory should not be taught in schools.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, my first sentence is going to be, do you know what critical race theory is? Because I don't think y'all know. I think people just take the name and they just run with it, but it's like, do you actually know what it is, where it comes from, who it started with, and what it's really about? So yeah, I'm gonna be sending a nice little email.
I love
If I need to
it.
pull up to the offices, I will.
He will pull up
and start
Emily
with
will pull
first of all.
Listen, it's because it's just like, what's the issue? It is nothing but a critical analysis of how race works in this country.
They're afraid of that.
They are.
That's why. That's it. They're afraid of it. They're afraid of the truth truly coming out in one side or certain groups of people looking a certain way. So do you though? Do you rally the troops? Let's get this change going.
Absolutely.
So you have to come back.
Yes.
You have to come back.
Thank you so much for having me. I would love to come back. Thank you so much.
So before we end off, I definitely want you to again let all the listeners know, like, if they have any questions for you, if they want to talk more about Sweet Auburn, if they want to talk, just send you a holler and say, girl, kudos, pat yourself on the back. That was a great episode. How do they reach out to you?
Okay, so again, you can find me on my Instagram or Twitter handles. That is _KayLoves, KAYELUVS. And also on Facebook, if you want to find me on Facebook. I'm not one of those people that's just like, Facebook. It's my first and last name. My last name is spelled OGLESBY. Kimberly, regular Kimberly, not with the LEEE, just LY. If you want to email me, that's fine too. It's just my first and last name @gmail.
All right. Well, we thank you again. I am so proud of you. Like, I was trying to think before I got on. I was like, when did I actually meet her? Like, was it graduation in 2008? I don't, was it 2009 when I moved down to Atlanta? I don't remember, but I do remember you being little. Now you are like a grown woman, just spewing knowledge and beauty and elegance. And I love you, like, for real.
Love you too. And I also I want to say that I also have a website that I'm still building on, but it is live. And it basically is a combination of all the things that I do, me as a scholar and as myself. And I'm just giving y'all a little preview. There is a YouTube coming.
All right.
There is a YouTube coming. Just pretty much just an expression of me, what I study, what I do, and what I want to do in this life. And before we go, if you don't mind, I would love to share some books, because one of the things for me,
first of all,
is #read a book is so important. And I think we need to read more. And I have some books that I would love to recommend to your listeners.
Okay, yeah, let's go.
First of all, listeners, you're recognizing you recommended to me.
Because Ebony is the book of the two. Like, she loves books. So you're probably gonna say some books she had probably already done read once, twice, 3 times.
I've got my notepad out. I'm about to.
She's like, hold on, let me get ready.
I got stuff for you. Okay, so the first one is called Southern Horrors. This is the cover. Look, don't mind. Oh my.
Good.
But Southern Horrors, Women and the Politics of Rape and Lynching is by Crystal Femster. Really good. Really breaks down what I was talking about earlier about how the idea of the Black male rapist and Black women being seen as Jezebels, and just that whole politics around lynching. And it's a really, really good book. I highly recommend it for you to kind of, because I know for me, when people talk about like that connection in between a Black male rapist, the sexual victim or victimization of Black women in their bodies, and then white male, for me, the connection was hard to put together until I read this book. So I say read. Other book that I highly suggest is At the Dark End of the Street, Black Women, Rape and Resistance, A New History of Civil Rights Movement from Rosa Parks to the Rise of Black Power. It's by Danielle McGee. I'm so sorry if I'm saying her name wrong, but this book is the book that inspired my scholarship. I love it so much. It has so many stories of Black women and them trying to get justice, not getting justice at all, some getting justice in terms of being sexually assaulted in some sort of way by white men. But I saw your face, Ciera. By white men. So it's such an important book. You don't really hear about this kind of history, especially after the Civil Rights Movement. you kind of don't hear it at all. And it's so much to this book. Please read it. And the last one that I would recommend, it's a huge book, but it's a good
Oh.
book. It's called
Oh.
Stamped from the Beginning, The Definite History of Racist Ideas in America by Ibram Kendi. This book is nothing to play with. This book will kind of give you an understanding of where racial ideas really came from and how they have changed over time. Because a lot of people try to say that we live in a post-racial society. No, we don't.
Do we?
They have done nothing but change the way that they look. Okay. As this book talks about, as anti-racist ideals have progressed, so has racial ideals. And we need to acknowledge that, and we need to study that. And that's basically what this book breaks down. It's a huge book, but I promise it is
worth
such
it.
a good read. It's such a good read.
Ebony,
And I have none. Yes, I have none of those. I was just telling a friend I need more Black books. So thank you for those recommendations.
No problem.
We will add those to the
Hashtag
description.
Read a book. Read a book.
So yeah, thank you for those recommendations. Thank you for all the information, the knowledge that you've passed on. And we really do look forward to seeing how you grow and what you do next, right? Yes. And we ready for this YouTube page. And I'm gonna need you to text me this website. Like, okay.
I'll text you the website, all of that. I'm gonna have it. Yes, I will.
All right. Well, we want to thank all the listeners for coming in and sitting with us for the past episode. And we hope that you come back for what's up next. But happy Juneteenth. And I think that's it, right, Ebony?
Yes, I think that's it. Thank you again. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.